My brothers and sisters, may the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what good are these for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people recline." Now there was a great deal of grass in this place, so the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. And then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had their fill, he said to his disciples, "Gather the fragments left over so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. We have recounted for us in the first reading today from the Acts of the Apostles the concluding dialogue between the apostles and the leadership of Israel. And we encounter now this very astute member of the Sanhedrin, the Pharisee Gamaliel, who suggests to his peers that you should just let these men go, because if it is of God, you can't force it, you can't stop it. If it is of man, it will die of its own accord. And of course, that's precisely what happens, because it is of God. It doesn't die, it continues to increase and multiply. And the gospel today from John recounts one of those significant reminders of us that in fact this whole plan was the plan of God. All of the accounts talk about a multiplication of loaves and fishes, but it is only John's account that places the initial conversation with regard to the issue on the lips of Jesus as opposed to one of the apostles. So Jesus says to Philip, "Where can we get enough food for these people?" And of course, John, who in the course of the whole telling of the story of Jesus consistently makes it clear that Jesus knew exactly what he was going to do, suggests here as well that he's only asking the question to kind of put Philip in a frame of reference for what he already planned to do. And so the multiplication of loaves and fishes takes place, and it again is sort of symbolic of that feeding of the people of Israel in the desert by God with manna. And it is the linkage again, which we see in all the gospel accounts, of Jesus being the fulfillment of the old law and in fact being the new Moses. We don't know exactly how that all happened and how it was all exchanged and shared, but it is so important a story and sign of Jesus' ministry that as I said, all 4 accounts have a recounting of it. And there was a church built very early on following the beginning of Christianity in the spot where tradition had it. This took place. This multiplication of loaves, of course, is secondary to what Jesus is really suggesting. He's saying he is the bread of life. It's not the physical food that we have, but the food spiritually that we need. And it's precisely because of that, as they begin to talk about wanting to make him king, that he disappears again, so that to ensure that they get the right picture. And we know full well that they didn't totally, because as the account continues in John, they once again come after Jesus, and Jesus is quick to say to them, "The only reason you're here is because I fed you the last time, and you want me to feed you again." And of course, they always kind of miss the point as to what he's really about. All of us, knowing full better because of our faith that he is indeed the bread of life, are sustained every time we gather at this table. And not just at this table, but specifically in hearing his word. And so this morning, we as the new disciples who hunger for new life, come to him seeking as those did at that time to be filled.